Nice. We are recording. Lauren Farris, welcome to the Terrain Theory Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lauren, thanks for coming on. I know you're a busy person. You're also sort of a mysterious figure in my life. I got to be honest. So I joined your Facebook community a couple months ago. I think I was just poking around and digging and trying to find out, how many other communities are out there that are hip to terrain. And then I stumbled on yours and I was like, holy shit, this is actually a big community and there's so much alignment. And there's a lot of folks in there, yourself included. And I hadn't heard your voice as part of this conversation that I've been a part of for the last 5 years within the terrain space that have some of these prominent figures. I'm sure you're familiar with the names like Tom Cowan, Andrew Kaufman, Alex Zeck. And I was so fascinated to find this like almost parallel community of terrain forward thinkers who also have a completely different approach from a nutrition standpoint, because most of those folks, as we've talked about with past guests, adhere to more like a Weston A. Price and are eating meat and even some are doing like raw meat. Then to find your community, which is very plant exclusive, like a lot of fruit and also adherence to like natural hygiene. I was fascinated. I really love how passionate the people are in that community. And I really, really appreciate the information that you're putting out there. And also that you prime people before they get into the group to like, you've got to check out these resources. You got to understand what you're stepping into from a community standpoint, so that we're kind of all speaking the same language. We're all on the same page. All that is to say, I knew that you were one of the founders of the group. We had Maria Manazza on, as you know, and she said, you got to get Lauren on. She can really speak to a lot of this stuff, more of the science of it, the background of it. So that's a long-winded way of saying like, thank you for coming on. And I'm really excited to dive in and find out, who are you to tell us that we shouldn't be eating meat?
That's a really interesting point too about, so there is like this dichotomy of the terrain theory versus terrain model and like the science of natural hygiene. And, when the whole COVID thing happened, we started out with this really tiny group on Facebook. We had 154 people who were all just like, hey, this is weird. Why are we suddenly afraid of all of this? Why are we suddenly like level 10 germaphobes? So the COVID thing really kind of kicked off our whole like large community, and we grew from 150 to like 10,000 people like overnight. And I was answering like 40, 50 posts a day, just answering people's questions. But what I didn't realize, because I'm busy, like I run a rescue. We help dogs heal from like cancer and seizures and chronic disease and stuff like that. So I wasn't spending a whole lot of time out there in the world of YouTube and seeing all of these things. And so I didn't kind of realize that there was kind of this like split in the terrain where the terrain model is based off of, originally Béchamp. He created the terrain theory, which is basically the terrain is everything, the microbe is nothing, right? And the microbe's effect is based on the conditions that it's in. And so there was this jumping off point, this scientific discovery, this observation of nature, and then there was 150 years of science that we call natural hygiene, the science of natural hygiene. And natural hygiene has been studying this entire time. Well, come COVID, we all of a sudden have all of these people out there that are like, we just discovered terrain theory, and they kind of just skipped over the 150 years worth of science that had been there. And so it was like very strange for people like me and other natural hygienists who were like, we've known this for a long time. We've got all of this science. We've been talking about this stuff forever. It was a little bit strange to see that split, and where people have gone off with the different fad diets or various like treatments and herbal supplements and all sorts of things. But as far as my background, so how I found natural hygiene in the first place was I was very sick. I had IBS, chronic pain, chronic fatigue, migraines, suicidal thoughts, severe anxiety. I had a golf ball size mass in my breast. I mean, list goes on. And when I realized I had a mass in my breast, that's when it kind of like dawned on me. Like I'd always been interested in health from a nutrition standpoint. I had started when I was in my early 20s. A friend of mine had given me a book. It was John Robbins' book, Diet for a New America. And that kind of put two and two together for me. Before that, I kind of was like the standard American. It's just like, it doesn't matter what you eat. Disease is just a mystery. You're just unlucky if you get cancer. Kind of that kind of train of thought. And that book kind of opened my eyes to it. But then I still was not getting better, not getting healthier. And so I kept digging. I was like, okay, well, I know there must be a correct answer. I just haven't found it yet. And so I went down all of these different tracks, like brain damage or grain damage, and what's that other one? I don't know. There's a couple books out there that are like, okay, wheat is the problem.
Yeah, wheat belly. Wheat belly is
wheat belly. That's the other one. Yeah, thank you. So I kind of went down that, and I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. And then there was the entire like PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and nutritionfacts.org, Dr. Greger. And there's all these like, I guess, semi-mainstream doctors that were talking about, okay, well, no, animal products are causing all of these problems. And if you look at both arguments, you're like, well, some of this makes sense and some of this makes sense. But still, they're not getting to the exact answer. And so I just kept digging and just kept going and going. And eventually I found raw food. I was just literally going to the library every single week and just pulling all the books, like just going one by one through all the health books until I found something like, okay, this makes more sense. Let me go this direction. But it was like nothing ever had the complete answer. Nothing ever made 100% sense. Like, you have the wheat belly people being like, wheat is bad, so eat lots of eggs. And I'm like, well, we know eggs aren't good for you because of, for cholesterol, and also because, we're humans. We're not eggivores, right? There's no salivary response when you just see like an egg coming out of the rear end of a chicken. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't make sense logically. So I was like, okay, well, clearly that's not right. And obviously there's like all this science backing that up and everything. So I'm like, okay, well, they seem right here, but they don't seem right there. And so it was just kind of this whole process of going through and finding, at each step of the way, kind of revealing something more. And then eventually I stumbled on raw food. And then from there, I found Dr. Shelton. And then it was like, as soon as I opened Dr. Shelton's book and started reading it, it was just like everything fell into place. I say like reading Natural Hygiene is like, you're just sitting there like turning the page like, oh, duh, that's so obvious. Why didn't I think of that? But it's like we're so programmed by the medical industry and society to think these other ways that we don't really think about them, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like we have these thoughts in our head. We're not necessarily really thinking things through. But then once you're presented with that logical argument, you're like, oh, this is just so obvious.
Lauren, what if I may, just to interrupt really quickly, can you call out like one or two of those observations that Shelton makes in his book that you were just like, aha?
Yeah, well, so I guess one of them would be like cooking food. If you look at every other species on the planet, they do not cook their food. And if you look at, for me, coming from rescuing dogs and cats, we see that dogs and cats that are fed, kibble, commercial canned foods, processed foods, they get the same diseases that we get, right? But they don't get that out in the wild. You don't see coyotes and wolves and the other canid species out in the wild dropping dead of cancer or heart disease or, even having like dental plaque, right? It's that they'll get like maybe a little bit of buildup on their teeth after 15 years of life, but they don't have the massive tooth problems that we have. So it's, so you look at that and you're like, okay, well, no other species sets fire to their food, damaging their food, creating carcinogens, creating acrylamide, creating all of these chemicals that we know are cancer causing. And then the other one was like, if you look at every carnivore, every omnivore on the planet, they all eat the bones. They all eat the feathers, the fur, the head. They all have teeth that are capable of puncturing a skull, crushing a skull. They have jaws that are scissored instead of, so you know how our jaw moves around in a circle to masticate?
Yep.
Like a dog's jaw is hinged and they can't go side to side. They can only go up and down, and they have huge crushing force for that because they're built to crush bones. Humans are not built to crush bones. So yeah, it's little things like that. And then, if you go through, um, like, we have very strong sense of sight, so we can see colors, whereas dogs have a lower range of a lower color range, because they're not meant to be picking out the bright red apple out of the green tree,
Right. That's like rods
but
and
we
cones,
are.
right? The rods and cones that we have in our eyes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's just a lot of different things like that. And then also when you start looking at body processes,
Mm-hmm.
like disease processes, um, we're told that colds are something attacking our body, and it's a virus, so it's something that has none of the requirements of life, but it somehow takes on the actions of a living organism, invading and replicating. And then we're meant to believe that the one lone virus enters the body, and the body is too weak to destroy it when it's one lone piece of material, but then it replicates, and it creates this entire army of itself. And then at that point, when our body is at its lowest, we're supposed to then be able to destroy the army. We couldn't destroy one, but we can destroy the army when we're at our weakest. I mean, it's just things like that just make no sense. And then when you think about a cold, okay, well, I'm sneezing, stuff's coming out of my body. I'm coughing, stuff's coming out of my body. I've got mucus, that's stuff coming out of my body. I've got a fever. Fever is burning stuff up. So it's very obvious that these processes are something being expelled.
Yeah.
They're all expulsion
Elimination.
symptoms.
Yeah.
Elimination.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then if you start to just see that from that different angle, it becomes very obvious that, like, one of these stories, one of these narratives makes sense and one of them does not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
So
So those are some of the highlights from Shelton's book. Continue your journey, because I want to go back. You had the health issues, right?
yes.
This
Yeah.
book was part of that, like, research and figuring out, okay, what's going on. You've got a growth in your breast. That's probably pretty concerning. Then what happened? Like, how did you, like, integrate this knowledge and better yourself?
Yeah. So I started reading it. Like I said, I started with the raw food books, and they're like a raw food recipe book. There was one from Victoria Batanko. It was talking about how she healed her family. Her son had juvenile diabetes, and her husband had like a huge list of major health issues and was like barely mobile, and she was chronically ill and obese and everything like that. And she just went and put her whole family on raw foods, and they all healed. And so I was like, okay, well, this makes sense. And that seems like, that's pretty motivating. So I was like, let me just try it. Let me just test it on myself. And so I just jumped in and I did 30 days on 100% raw. And I was not perfect. Like, I wasn't following the exact hygienic diet. I was doing a lot of smoothies and probably overeating on nuts and seeds a little bit and stuff like that. But the change in my health over those 30 days was just like night and day. I used to wake up all the time with like massive congestion. I get like a lot of sinus headaches and things like that. All of that was gone. Headaches, I had chronic headaches all the time because I was chronically dehydrated from the cooked foods. And so all of those headaches went away during that period. I ended up losing, I think, like 15 pounds just over that 30 days. But the biggest thing for me was the anxiety. So like I said, it started when I was in high school. I would have insomnia and then severe anxiety and suicidal thoughts, and just like really, like, I would get into like these really negative spirals in my thinking, and that completely shifted. And then I kind of fell off and I went back to cook food a little bit, and that the mental health stuff came raring back like immediately. Like, I remember I was like, oh, I could just have one slice of sourdough bread. It's not that big of a deal. And I had that one piece of sourdough bread, and I immediately I felt the anxiety. But what was really interesting is that I could actually feel it moving through my body, because I had become a lot more self-aware about what was going on in my body. And so as it moved through, I could feel the anxiety, and then as soon as it was eliminated, boom, anxiety gone. And I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. Like, this makes sense. This is, this is a number one, showing results really rapidly. I feel so much better. And not only that, but like energy wise, just being able to get up and wake up in the morning and feel like I could just tackle the day instead of having to drag myself out of bed and have a cup of coffee and, kind of slowly enter my day. It was like I was waking up at 5:30 in the morning, jumping out of bed, excited to meet the day, and so that was huge for me. And then I took about 18 months. So I was 100% raw. Found Dr. Shelton's work, stayed 100% raw, following the hygienic diet, healed everything. I had like a big healing event at about 18 months in, and that was really intense. I was in bed for 72 hours straight. I mean, I felt like I was dying. It was awful. I had fever, just burning up, then chills, and then burning up, and then chills, nausea, vomiting. Super weak. Like I could barely stand up. I had to get help to walk to the bathroom, and even just like the sheet touching my skin was like excruciatingly painful. And then just as soon as it came on, like 72 hours, bam, woke up on the fourth day, felt like I had been born into a new body. It was just this massive change. And I noticed like the next day that the mass was gone. And like I was not expecting that. Like I figured that would be like a much slower process. And I've since learned that usually it is a more slow process for people, but I guess it just depends on the person and what your body's focusing on at that time. But yeah, it was just like night and day in terms of just waking up feeling like I had been put into a brand new body. And then that kind of is what led into me rescuing dogs, because now I'm like, okay, I have so much energy. What the heck do I do with myself? So I started to adopt dogs from the shelter, and it we adopted senior dogs, so like any dog 8 and older, and across the board, we could not find a single healthy dog. Every single one of them had cancer, they had seizures, they had vestibular disease, they had heart disease, they had skin issues. It was just down the line, hernias, everything. And so I was like, we like obviously, if I was able to heal myself of all of these things, there has to be a way to do it for the dogs as well. And so then I really delved into that and just using like the science of terrain model, natural hygiene, but then just using the species appropriate diet for the dogs. And then again, species appropriate diet for the cats, because cats are carnivores, dogs are omnivores, humans are frugivores. So we all have different diets that we require to create health. But if we put ourselves on that diet, the body is always moving back towards health. And so no matter where these animals are on the spectrum of disease, whether it's cancer, seizures, or just like minor health issues, as soon as we put them on the diet, they start to improve and eventually reach a point where they're running around like puppies again. And yeah, I had a puppy, Lucky. He was 19 years old. I call him a puppy. I call them all puppies because they run around like puppies. But he was 19 years old. We used to take him to the dog park, and he would run circles around the kibble fed dogs at the dog park. And I would have people coming up to me all the time, like, "How old is your puppy?" And I'm like, "He's 19 years old," and nobody would believe me. And I was like, "I can show you. I've got the vet records and everything from the shelter records from when we got him and everything." But no, he's 19, and I mean that's what life is about, right? Like extending our years, great, but how much life do we have in our years, right? And being able to wake up every morning and have abundant energy and joy. And same thing for the dogs, like being able to see them wake up every morning comfortable and running free and just playing like puppies. That's, I think, really what the goal is. I don't really care if I live to 120 or I live to 80, but I want to, when I'm 80, I want to be able to carry my own groceries and play with grandkids and run around and climb trees. So
Wow.
I
Those
think
are some
that's
pretty powerful testimonials. How long ago was it when you had that healing event? You said after 18 months.
so it was about 15 years ago I started, so that would have been about 12 years ago was when I had, or no, 15 years ago, so about 13 and a half years ago.
Wild. That's wild. To have such a transformation so dramatically in such a, well, I guess it's not a short amount of time because it's really 18 months, but that healing crisis, I don't think we've heard a story quite as dramatic as that been.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, and it was there were bumps along the way in those 18
Sure.
months. You know what I mean? Like, it was not all like sunshine and roses. I think a lot of people get in that idea of,
Right.
we're going to change our diet and we're just going to feel wonderful the whole time and everything's going to be great. And I did have a period where I felt much better. Like that first 30 days, that's what really motivated me to keep going, was because that first 30 days, I did see big changes in a lot of the things that were uncomfortable for a long period of time. But then there was down times. There was the times where I was really tired. There was the times where, I had rashes breaking out and all that stuff that's been stuck inside for so long has to come out. And there were times where like my anxiety would skyrocket and I'd be like crying in the corner, like, I'm never going to heal. I did too much damage to my body. And I think that's something that a lot of people run into, and they think that they're alone in, is that when you start healing your body, you're really excited at first, the information makes sense and you feel a little bit better. And so you're really motivated, but then we live in this instant gratification world where we expect things to just happen quick. And it doesn't. Healing does not happen quickly. I mean, you can have big expulsion events and have like big improvements over a short period of time, but it's, it is definitely like a gradual process and a building, and you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have, like, I always call it like the roller coaster. It's like you have like a big high and then, you crash, and then you have like a couple little bumps along the way. And then eventually you kind of stabilize out at like ideal health.
I think the phrase that I've heard used, and you used healing event, but I've heard healing crisis. And I think healing crisis is kind of an accurate phrase. At the same time, a person hears crisis and they think this requires intervention. I require saving.
Yeah.
When that, I think, and it's a comfort thing. We are so used to being comfortable. We're not really used to being uncomfortable. And we've been taught this at a young age, that when you feel these ailments, a cold, the fever, you're meant to address those symptoms and get yourself back to being comfortable. And I think that part of this whole journey that we humans need to undergo as we understand the nature of health and sickness is that healing crises are to be welcomed, that discomfort has to be sat with, because that's part of the healing process. And that, I think that re-education has to start at the youngest ages. Like, we have to be working on we have to be starting to educate these children to be like, look, the fever's good. The fever's good. The fever's good. Right? Like, yes, it sucks. It hurts. It doesn't feel great. But on the other end of it, you are going to be healthier. Your body knows what it's doing. And as adults, we need to re-educate ourselves as well. And then sit with that discomfort. And this is what I've been taking away from my experience so far in your community that you've built, is this reassurance. First, folks are sharing all the time. Like, they're sharing their journeys all the time. And part of them are new in their journey as they're transitioning to raw food. And they are all undergoing, not all, but many of them are undergoing these healing crises. And they're like, is this normal? Is this normal? What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And like, the real answer is just stay the course. Like, it's always going to be stay the course. Like, you have to, once you've accepted that this path is the right path, eating raw, right? Fixing your nutrition. And I think the overlap in the various approaches that we see, whether it's Weston A. Price, whether it's carnivore, is like, first and foremost, I think you've even acknowledged this, Maria did too, but if you eliminate the crap, right? And I think those are the overlaps. That's the Venn diagram. When you eliminate the crap, you will take strides, right? I think what you would probably argue, and I think Maria said the same thing, is like, you're not going to go the 100% if you are still eating raw meat, because it's not species appropriate. Fair enough. However, if you go the 90% because you've eliminated the processed foods, you will experience these healing crises. You're all going to do it. You should do it. Right? Because we're all exposed to the same toxins. We've all come up under the same system. They all come up under the allopathic model. We've all been injected, probably, most of us. So we have to work through that stuff, and it's not going to look pretty. You had rashes, like 18 months of ups and downs, but you stayed the course. I think that's what's remarkable. And now you're on the other end of it. And, you think about the growth on your breast. And real quickly before I continue, did you have that examined or diagnosed? Like, was it cancer? Did you have that label attached to it, or was it just a growth?
No, by that point in time, I realized that medicine had absolutely no answers for me. So I never did. I never got it like, diagnosed in terms of like getting a medical label for it.
Which probably helped you, right? Because then you don't have that whole belief system and yeah, and
Absolutely.
you don't have the
Yeah.
definition, of cancer and where that could go. So if you think about like the body accumulating trash all over, you can't see all of it, but the lump is probably just some trash, right? It's some trash that needs to be taken out.
Exactly.
And if you imagine that your body is a house filled with trash, right? But you've got some trash spilling out of a window. And it's like, okay, once you've stopped adding trash and you can allow the trash people to start taking out the trash, they're going to take out all the trash in the house that you can't see. And then once they've done all that, they're like, okay, now we can deal with this thing that's spilling out of the window. And that's the lump in the breast. And so it kind of makes sense that overnight or over a 72-hour period, after you've removed all this other trash all over your body, it's like, now we're going to hit this thing. And it
Yeah.
looks like spontaneous, healing or spontaneous remission, I suppose would be a label that they would use in allopathic. But it kind of makes sense, right? It kind of makes sense. And you go, this is just the miracle that is the human body. It's always trying to heal. It's trying to heal. And it's trying to remove toxins and it's trying to remove waste. And once you get out of the way by not adding more crap, like you're going to see some remarkable things, but there's going to be discomfort along the way. Stay the course, acknowledge that the fever's good, the rash is good. You don't need to be putting topicals on there and stuff. And it's helpful. I think one of the things I love about your community is that you and other moderators and admins are like quick to jump in and just reassure. And you've got so many people in there who are like, this is normal. It happened to me. Like you sometimes need that validation. You can't just be an island healing for 18 months, like going through these things and be like, is this normal? I don't even know. You've created a community of other people who've gone through this and they're like, it's normal. Stay the course.
And I did that intentionally because I didn't have anybody when I was going through it.
Yeah.
And, the only person I had was my ex, who was not on board at all and was like, you need to go to the hospital. Right. So it was like a battle for me of like the knowledge that I had acquired versus like the pressure of the outside world, just be like their fear responses. Because, when people, tell you like, oh, you got to go to the hospital, they're not saying that because they're like educated about what the hospital is going to do, that they really think that the hospital has the correct answers. They're saying it out of, I'm afraid and I don't know what to do. And so I don't want to have to feel this fear. So I just want to put it off on somebody else. And so, we have that default where people are just like, you've got to go see the expert. And for me, like my answer back to that was, I don't want to see an expert whose results is never having cured a single disease ever and being responsible for 9 out of the top 10 human diseases that people die from. Like, aside from car accidents, medicine is largely responsible or contributory to the heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancers. You go down the line. And I mean, an iatrogenic death, which is death that is caused by the doctor, making a mistake or, not even making a mistake, but just like intentionally giving you a pharmaceutical, which side effects include death. Like that, to me, it was just like a no-brainer in terms of like, that doesn't have an answer for me because I don't want those results. Yeah. So for me, I was looking at people who had gotten the results that I wanted to get. And that's how I ended up at Natural Hygiene, is because I went all around looking at all these people. And, I even looked at like the Weston Price diet, but, they weren't getting the results. The leaders of the thing, like Sally Fallon, and you could see it on their faces that they're not getting the results. So for me, it was like, I don't want to follow somebody that looks like that their disease conditions are still clearly showing on their face, even though they've made positive changes. And I always explain to people, I was like, if you're eating McDonald's every day and then all of a sudden you go to making home cooked meals at home, you're going to start to feel better because the level of poisoning that you're putting into your body is going down. But that doesn't mean that just because we're surviving that we're thriving. Right. And that's the big difference. A lot of these nutrition programs are like, okay, well, I want to maximize nutrition, or I want to maximize nutrients, instead of thinking about, all of the aspects, like how can we utilize these nutrients? Because, if you go like towards the like the supplement programs and stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, we know that, people who eat a lot of niacin don't have depression. So therefore, if we just stuff a lot of niacin into our clients, and their depression will go away. And so then they go to this inorganic, unusable by the body supplement pill of niacin and think that they're going to fix the problem. But then it doesn't fix the problem because you're just adding something unusable. So, there's this idea of nutrient density versus assimilation, our ability to utilize. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused in terms of nutrition. Like you see that a lot in like the carnivore diet and the keto and paleo. They're like, well, the meat is very nutrient dense and I'm getting lots of nutrient density. It's like, okay, but you're only looking at, like, you're very hyper focused on one very narrow thing and not looking at the big picture. Like, okay, it's great that we have nutrient density, but are we able to utilize that? What is the byproducts? What's the toxic byproduct of that digestion? Because if we put animal tissues into our body, so animal tissue is something that is putrefying, because the moment that life ceases, so the heart shuts down, blood flow stops, bacterial action begins, and the meat starts to putrefy. So, if that animal was killed a week ago and stuck in a refrigerator, bacteria is moving slowly, but it's still moving. There's still putrefaction going on. So putrefaction has byproducts, one of which is ammonia. So in a carnivore species like a cat, they have a very short digestive tract that rapidly eliminates that material. So it goes in, very strong mechanical action mixed with the acidity, breaks down the meat very quickly, and then digestive tract is very short. So they're able to eliminate that meat before it produces too much ammonia to poison the body. Now, with humans, we have a very long digestive tract. And so when we put meat into our digestive tract, it moves very, very slowly. So all of that putrefaction that's occurring is creating ammonia. And that ammonia is a poison. And we can poison ourselves with plants too. We can create fermentation out of alcohol. For example, like if we eat starches like potatoes and wheat, these are very slow moving through the digestive tract, and we don't have a very good digestive ability for starches. Starch digestion requires ptyalin, which we have in our saliva, but we don't have it in our digestive tract. So in order for us to digest something like a sweet potato, we have to really thoroughly coat that with a lot of saliva, so that the saliva can start working on breaking down the starches, so that when it gets into our digestive tract, it can digest sugars. But that's because we're not natural root eaters. We don't really have the sense of smell to smell a root down underneath the ground. So we were never built for those starchier foods. And so when we eat those, if they're moving through really slowly and we're not fully digesting the starches, those starches can ferment and create alcohol. So a lot of times where people run into problems, even on like a vegetarian or a vegan diet, is that they're eating a lot of the starches, the pasta, the wheat, the potatoes, and then they have all of this bloating and gas and fermentation issues because they've got all of this sticky, sludgy, gluey stuff moving through very slowly and producing a lot of alcohol. And then over time, that, even though it's small amounts, it's not like you're drinking an entire bottle of vodka in one night, but it is just a slow, chronic poisoning of the body. And so we have to look at that in terms of, what is most ideal is, yes, something has a lot of nutrients, but what are the other effects that are there? And even within the plant community, there's foods like Swiss chard and spinach, they're very high in oxalates. Now, humans have oxalobacter bacteria, so we can break down some oxalates, but if we're eating large volumes of it, our bacteria is not going to be able to keep up. So it's going to start to create problems. So if you have those people that are doing those green smoothie things where they're drinking giant kale, spinach smoothies every single day, 3 times a day, and then all of a sudden they start having kidney stones or teeth issues, things like that, because they're just overdoing it on the oxalates. So every food, even our most ideal foods, has some level of toxicity to it. Like even lettuce has lacticarium, I think it's called, which is like a mild sedative. Now, if like the benefit of the lettuce far outweighs the amount of toxin in that plant, right? So we actually have a sense of taste that allows our body to see what, it's like a poison detection system. So if you taste something that burns your tongue, like a spicy pepper, that's your body warning you to spit it out. right? If we have lettuces, some lettuces are very sweet. They taste great, very appealing. Some lettuces like dandelion greens or arugula, they're spicy or they're bitter. That's our body telling us this has more toxins in it than benefits. And so that's our sense of taste warning us of the poisons that are present. And you can see that with onions, right? Onions are a great example because they're such a strong irritant that they make our eyes water, right? So you start crying, and it's like we, for some reason, as like a human species, we've just totally ignored this and just been like, no, these are great.
Well, that's
And
why that's why you caramelize them, right? And they're delicious, but they're cooked. I get you.
Yeah. Oh, but why are they delicious? That's a great point. Why are they delicious? Because they're caramelized. Because we've brought all the sugars out.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells you too, like, what is our natural food?
Yeah.
Our foods are high sugar foods,
Right.
because our sense of taste, even when we eat things that are non-ideal, like some of the denser vegetables, like the cabbage and the Brussels sprouts and things like that, we want to caramelize those too, because we want to bring out the sugars, because we're a sugar eating species.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. Mike, do you want to say anything about dandelion greens? Because I imagine that triggered you a little bit.
Well, I mean, in the scene, quote unquote, dandelions are often held up as like, like there's the meme of like the Roundup killing the dandelion, and then the other side, it's the thing that actually cures the cancer versus, we're all mixed up about it. But do you not subscribe to dandelion being a superfood?
No, I don't subscribe to superfoods at all, actually. And it's funny because Dr. Shelton wrote his books back in like the 1940s and 1950s. And even back then they were pushing the superfoods. And he has like a whole chapter in one of his books about that.
It's amazing.
But yeah, and it's, again, it goes back to the nutrient density versus toxicity. So dandelions have certain nutrients, and, dandelions are great for certain things. Like, I'm a gardener, right? Dandelions are great because they have very deep tap roots that break up rocks down below and bring nutrients up to the soil. So I don't think we should be spraying Roundup on dandelions because they help improve the soil. But dandelions are not human food. They're food for like bunnies, right? But it's just like eating grass. Like, we're not grassivores either. So we don't sit there and, go chew the cud with the cows, because that's not a food for us. I mean, we can eat grass. I mean, there's people that buy the wheatgrass powders and barley grass and stuff like that. But, that's, it's not our food. We're not cows, and if you think about walking out to the field and chewing on grass, like, that's just not something that appeals to you. But if you, see a blackberry bush, that does appeal to you.
Amen.
So
what about tinctures and teas and things like that, where you're not actually consuming as food, but you're taking in their energy, if you will?
Yeah. So first of all, most tinctures and teas are either made with alcohol, which is a poison, or some of them are made with like glycerin and other products. So most of the time you're getting something that is already made with something that we know is a poison. But then you're just taking like the concentrated toxin and putting it into a liquid form. And what you're really doing is you're just modeling medicine. So you're making an herbal medicine. And often these superfood tinctures or herbal tinctures are said to like assist the body in detox and things like that. So first of all, we have to understand that things must be alive to take action. So the body itself takes all action. Like, if we eat an apple, we take a bite of the apple, our mouth chews the apple, our throat swallows the apple, our stomach crushes the apple, our digestive tract breaks down, assimilates it, the bacteria moves the materials. At no point did that apple take any action whatsoever. It was just an object. It's a building block. It's like a brick building a house. Bricks don't build houses. Builders build houses out of bricks. So that we have that same idea too a lot in the like natural healing community, is like, food is medicine. No, medicine is poison by definition. I mean, literally, it really is. The word pharmakia is poison, sorcery, witchcraft. But by definition, medicine is a poison, and even medicine will admit this, because what they say is the poison is in the dose. And so if they get the right dose, then they're healing you. But if they get the wrong dose, they killed you. But that's okay, because that's just iatrogenic death, and we'll just write that off with like a Latin term, and kind of make the public not aware of it by hiding it under uh, medical jargon. But yeah, so when we're taking these tinctures or even like essential oils, we're taking the concentrated plant toxin, making it really strong, and then using it in order to do something like a lot of times it's, improve your immunity, or we want to put tea tree oil on a wound in order to use it as an antibiotic or an antibacterial. Those antibiotics, antibacterials, those are all things that are suppressing the body's natural healing processes. They're killing the bacteria that the body put in place to break down the waste and the cellular debris and the toxins. And they're working against the body. Now, if we put an ointment on our wound, does the wound close faster? Sure. But is that beneficial? That's what we always have to ask, is just because we see something working does not necessarily mean that it's having the effect that we want. See, wounds are supposed to close very slowly. They stitch back together very slowly, so they leave a drain open so that all of the cellular waste and dead cell debris can drain outwards. When we stitch a wound close, like if you go to medicine, you can end up with sepsis because you've stitched the wound so tightly that it can't drain. So now medicine puts in drains because they've actually learned this, but for 150 years, they've been stitching people closed and giving them sepsis and killing people because they're forcing the wound closed. Same thing happens when we put an ointment on the skin. Our skin is a defensive barrier, and it's protecting the body from anything toxic or irritating or injurious. And it protects the interior of our body from that material. When we have an open wound, things can get into the interior. It can get into the blood vessels. It can get into the lymphatic system. So if we put an ointment on the skin or on over a wound, the wound rapidly closes because the body is forcing the wound closed, not because the ointment has any ability to take action, but because the body is responding to that toxic substance and saying, I don't want that getting inside my body, so I need to close rapidly so that I can't. And
right.
we see this.
Need to cut my losses. Right. What about, just to stay with herbs a second, like people often claim something like cilantro is like a heavy metal chelator. Do you subscribe to that?
Not at all. That's a pretty interesting topic, actually. So again, same basic premise that in order for something to take action, it must be alive. Cilantro is not alive. So, in the
well, if you ate it out of the garden, it would be alive, no?
Well, it's not. It's alive when it's growing, but then as soon as you cut it, it's no longer alive. And so, if you think about it this way, the narrative is, okay, you got a vaccine and you got some heavy metal and it's sitting in your brain. So then you take some cilantro, and the cilantro is supposed to somehow swim around your body and get up to your brain and then grab hold of that and bring it back down. Well, so our stomach is outside the body, right? If you think about like a donut hole, right? Our from mouth to exit is completely separate from the interior cavities of our body. So our body filters everything that comes into the body. So if you eat cilantro, all that happens is that it goes into your stomach breaks it down, and what typically happens is your body will create a little bit of diarrhea to eliminate it because cilantro has some pretty strong irritants in it. So it ends up creating a little bit of diarrhea in a healthy person. If you're chronically constipated, you might not notice that, but in a healthy person who eats cilantro, they notice it. But so your stomach filters and your digestive tract filters, and it only pulls into the body what it can use. So the idea that the cilantro could then, take that action of somehow floating all the way up to the brain, knowing where to go, and then collecting that material and then getting it out of the body, it just doesn't hold up to basic scrutiny. But the reason that people think that is because people confuse in vivo versus ex vivo. So we do studies outside the body in a petri dish or in a glass of water, for example. With the cilantro, what they did was they put in water, they put heavy metals and they put the cilantro, and the heavy metal moved towards the cilantro. And so therefore that they assumed that the cilantro was somehow taking action and pulling that. But who's to say, well, it wasn't the metal taking action to attack the cilantro? It's nonsense. And, but even at that, even if it was true that the cilantro was somehow pulling that material towards itself, then, you still have to alter that to what's happening inside the body itself. So the body itself is not a glass of water where the metal is over here sitting in the cup and the, cilantro is going in. The metal is sitting in our tissues, embedded into the tissue, and the body has to liberate that from the tissue in order to eliminate it. So yeah, all healing occurs as an action of the body. There's no substance on the planet that ever assists the body in detox, in healing, in eliminating things. It is always the action of the body to remove it from the tissues. What food does is food is either an acute poison, a non-acute poison, so a low-level poison, or it is beneficial, as in it is good building materials. It's good. It provides good energy, provides the sugar our body needs to create energy. It provides the alkaline minerals for our bones or teeth or stuff like that. So it's like food is like bricks, right? It's either you're building with good quality bricks that are going to build a good, strong house, or you're building with poor quality bricks that are going to build a weak house. So, that goes across the board with any herbs, any supplements, anything that is not in its whole natural form. So even things like when we get what they call whole food supplements, and it'll be like a powdered mix of like beets and carrots and grasses and all sorts of stuff. But even that, they call it a whole food, but it is not a whole food. Whole food has all of its water and fiber intact. That, powder has had its water and fiber removed. So it's a heavily processed, refined industrial product. It is not a food. Sorry.
No,
I know.
No.
Yeah, you should just pick that microphone up and drop it on the desk for us.
I know. The terrible pun that comes to mind is that you are just you're upsetting all the apple carts.
I know. That's what I say is natural hygiene offends everyone.
I love it though,
because we all have some sort of thing that we love that is hurting us. Yeah. And like for me, when I first found natural hygiene, I totally rejected it. And it's kind of funny why. I stumbled across an article from Dr. Shelton about why chocolate was bad for you.
Ooh.
And I was at that point, I was not ready to give up my chocolate. Yeah. And so I would rather deny that is a bad thing for me than give it up. And so, it's salt, herbs, meat, dairy products, wheat. Dairy products and wheat are, they contain opioid peptides, so they're highly addictive. Yeah. So when you confront somebody about that, it's like you're asking them to give up their heroin. Yep. Mm-hmm. So it's, we're, as a community, we're used to it. We're used to getting that attack. We're used to like people coming into the group and be like, no, that can't be right. You've got to be wrong because that's my favorite, irritant, poison, toxin. But yeah, it's just, I always say like, we can believe things and we can know things, right? There are laws of nature that are observable and unchanging. They're immutable. And then there are our belief systems. Our belief systems are changeable and, we can get kind of hung up on them and emotional about them and everything like that. But, we just have to look objectively without emotion. And that's, I think, where a lot of people get hung up is it's very hard for people to look at things objectively and just put their emotions to the side and look at it. And that's, I think that's what our group has managed to do a really good job of, is just be like, we understand that's where you're coming from because we all came from there. We all used to believe this, we all grew up on the SAD diet, right? We all grew up on eating animals and dairy products and processed foods and canned vegetables. And, I remember growing up, fruit was too expensive. Fruit was a luxury item. We weren't allowed to eat it, right? We were all growing up on these like social programs. And so we try to take that emotion out of the situation and just be like, we understand because we were there at one point too. But this is objectively true and we can show you why and walk you through the steps of how you can prove that it's objectively true.
Yeah. Let's talk about Weston A. Price real quickly, because I just know so many of the folks in the terrain space probably arrived there through Weston A. Price and Wise Traditions, perhaps. so his observations were of indigenous people and through the lens of a dentist, right? So they had perfect teeth, and he found that the common thread was that they were eating animal fats. That's basically it, right? They didn't have a lot of processed food in their diet because they were still sort of isolated from Western civilization, and that they were eating animals. That was his observation, right? And it was just through teeth.
Well,
But go ahead and push
I don't
back.
know if I don't know if I would say that's entirely accurate. That may be what the Weston Price Foundation produces now, but like Weston Price's original book is part of the Natural Hygiene library.
Okay.
And so what he observed was where processed foods were
Got it.
introduced. That is where the dental and health issues started to arise. And somewhere along the lines, things I think have gotten the water has gotten a little muddied.
That's what I've discovered too. I started to dig a little bit deeper, and that was my discovery too, that it was really more about processed food and not about animal fat versus vegetarian, vegan, frugivore. Go on, please.
Yeah. And, it was also, we have to realize that humans have been eating non-ideal for thousands of years.
Yeah, grains.
Grains, animal agriculture.
Sure.
These are all things that build generation upon generation. So it's like, your grandparents make one mistake and then pass it down to you. And now you making a second mistake and you're passing two mistakes down to your children. So, there are very few places in the world where humans are still eating their natural diet because, we've moved to non-ideal climates. We've created situations where we're eating for survival, not for thriving. And, a great example of that is like the Inuits, right? The Inuits, they live in a very cold climate where there's
a lot of mangoes. There's a lot of mangoes up there.
Yeah. But, so obviously they've adopted a diet heavy in like seal meat and the things that are available for them to survive on.
Yes.
But as a result of that, they have cut the natural lifespan down in half because the natural human lifespan is 120 years. Okay. We know that humans are meant to live 120 years. That's what we're supposed to live. So anything short of that is you didn't live out your full life. They're living to 60 maximum, right? And it's actually... Interestingly, since they've started getting like more transportation of like modern processed foods, their lifespan is actually going up, even though they're introducing processed foods, just because they're cutting back on the amount of animal tissue that they're eating.
Interesting.
And another thing that people love to kind of skirt over in a lot of the like carnivore diet groups and even I think Weston Price, I think I've seen him do that as well, is that they just totally ignore that every single summer, the Inuits have like a huge berry harvest. They go out and they harvest all the berries they can find because they know that they require that for survival. And so like we kind of just completely gloss over that with these like carnivore diets. We're like, oh, all fruit is bad and terrible. It's like, no, the people that are eating just to survive, they're desperately seeking out these berries because they know that without them, they're going to die. Yeah. So, it's like a lot of times people get a certain idea in their head that they want to be right. And then they go and they seek out the information that proves it.
Yeah.
Like,
confirmation bias, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like Dr. Greger says, like people love good news about their bad habits. Right. I think that's a good way of putting it is like, yeah, if you tell me right now that I can eat all the chocolate I want for, every single day and it's going to give me X, Y, and Z, health benefits, I'm going to believe you because I want to eat that chocolate. Right.
Well, if it's covering a berry, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, Lauren, let's talk about this. Fruitarian, frugivore, it's too much sugar, not enough protein.
Yeah.
Go.
And that's so the great protein myth, right? Yes. That is the thing that has really kind of taken over the modern society. And basically how this occurred was this idea of, well, just to be safe, we need to add a little bit more. So basically these early nutritionists, they measured how much protein we needed. And then they said, well, just to be safe, let's round that up a little bit. And then the next decade of scientists said, well, maybe we should just round that up a little bit more just to be safe. But at no point did they think, is there a non-safe upper limit?
Wow.
So what happened was it was just like it's kind of the same thing with the supplement idea is like, okay, well, I think this person isn't getting enough sunlight. So let's give them like these mega high doses of chemical vitamin C, or vitamin D. But we never said, well, can we actually isolate anything from the sun in order to make vitamin D, right? And what are the negative ramifications of utilizing this instead of the natural thing, right? So I think it's a lot man's hubris, right? Like we always think that we are smarter than God, smarter than nature. We know better. We want to do better. And so we're always trying to find that shortcut, that magic pill, that, that thing that lets us kind of still do the bad things we want to do. Like if you think about even the entire concept of supplements, and it's like most people think I can eat whatever I want. I can eat McDonald's every single day, but as long as I take my Centrum 1 or my, my multivitamin, right, I'm getting everything I need.
It's a wash.
Yeah. And it's like you can't, two wrongs don't make a right. You can't make up for bad behavior by doing another bad behavior. You have to stop the bad behavior.
Yeah.
Like, and you can't even like equal it out by being like, oh, well, I'm going to do a bad behavior, but then I'm also going to do a good behavior. Like, no, you have to stop doing the bad behavior in order to get the results that you want, because there's consequences to the bad behavior, even if you do a good behavior. So
Sure. So let's go back though. Let's go back. So protein, you're talking about like, this is again, like standard American diet, right? What is suggested from a daily intake perspective in protein? And you're saying that this has just been sort of inflated over time, but a person looks at like a bowl of fruit that is being eaten by any given person in your community, which now includes me, because I just had a big bowl of fruit for breakfast. Not big enough, by the way. And they're looking at it and they're like, there's no protein in there. You're going to die. There's no protein in there. You're going to wither away. Answer that.
Yeah. So the human body does not utilize proteins. It creates proteins. So we manufacture proteins out of amino acids. And your chicken that you're eating for dinner also manufactures proteins out of amino acids. So the chicken ate the grass and the seeds and the grains and stuff like that in order to manufacture its own proteins. And those chicken proteins are chicken proteins. They are specific to the chicken to do the jobs that the chicken needs to do. They are not human proteins. So when we ingest a chicken, piece of chicken, our body cannot use that protein in any way. So what it has to do is it has to break that protein down back into the amino acids. But because it's been cooked and processed and everything, most of those amino acids are now damaged, and they're also used. So it's like, putting used motor oil back in your car, right? It's not an ideal material. So you're taking this already used material, you're taking the cooked and damaged amino acids, and then your body has to sort through all of that, eliminate all the garbage, take what it can out of it. So it's a highly inefficient process. So we're utilizing a lot of our nerve energy in order to break down that protein. And then we're utilizing a lot of our nerve energy to flush out that protein. And then we're putting a ton of burden on our kidneys to flush out all of that excess protein. And then what we're left with is inferior materials. So a lot of times what we see is people who did like a carnivore, keto, paleo, one of those really high meat diets, when they go on the natural diet and start healing, their muscle tissue breaks down rapidly and then it rebuilds. But in that interim, it's breaking all that material down because it was just built with such shoddy materials that it's weak and damaged. And, you see this a lot too in like bodybuilders and people who have like really big swollen muscles, but then they get injured all the time. Yeah. And you also see, like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the YouTuber is Anatoly.
Yeah.
He like dresses up like a janitor and he walks around, right? Yeah. And he's very lean, but he is extremely strong because big, bulky muscles do not make us strong. Muscle strength is based on, use and health. And so lean, properly fed muscles are far stronger than those swollen muscles, because the swollen muscles are basically just big like that because of edema. There's just a lot of water being put into the muscle in order to dilute the acids. And so if you have a lot of acids burn, they hurt, they damage, they injure the tissue. And so then the tissue becomes weaker. So that's why you see a lot of these people getting injured really frequently when they're on these super high protein diets, because their body is so acidic and they're pulling all this water into the muscles in order to dilute all that acidity. And then, everything's getting broken down because if you're putting all this acidity into your body and you're not putting the alkaline minerals in, that then your body has to draw those minerals from elsewhere. So it pulls the minerals out of our bones. Obviously, that's osteoporosis, but it also pulls them out of our tissues. So, when people get like prolapses or hernias, that's because they've been neglecting putting alkaline minerals into their body. And so the strength and structure of all their tissues is getting weaker and weaker. And then aneurysms and strokes, same thing. Varicose veins, spider veins. This is the alkaline minerals that were in those veins being sucked out of them. And so then they get weaker and they start to bulge out and, get misshapen, and sometimes they'll rupture. And that's obviously very dangerous, like, stroke, aneurysm. So when we're eating like all of that high protein, we're putting all of this acidity in without the alkalinity. And if you look at the rest of nature, when you see omnivores, when you see carnivores, they're eating the bones. Why? Because the bones provide all that alkaline mineral that you need to balance that acidity. Yeah. But when humans eat protein, we don't eat the bones because we don't have the teeth structure to chomp down on bones. And it's obviously just not appealing to us either. So, you're doing like double damage to your body. Like every time you put in that acidic food, you are also pushing out that salad meal. So, natural human diet is we're eating lots and lots of leaves, lots of alkaline minerals, lots of fruit that's full of alkaline minerals. Then if you take those out and replace them with things that are highly acidic, you're not only adding acid, but you're subtracting alkaline. And so it starts to really build up over the course of a lifetime.
Yep. Got it. And again, like this concept that, you're taking amino acids and building protein, like I think that this is one of the things that's maybe counterintuitive to a lot of folks out there because it's not what we've been taught. Like if you are into going to the gym and trying to get strong and build muscle, you need protein powders, right? You need this protein to build this muscle. And that's not necessarily the case. Like you can be eating this natural hygiene, plant exclusive, predominantly fruit diet and still be building muscle. I mean, I look at like gorillas, silverback gorilla, like they are predominantly vegetarian, right? I don't think they eat meat. Chimpanzees will be found eating meat, but I don't know that gorillas eat a lot of meat. It's mostly just whatever they're finding.
Yeah, and even chimpanzees, that's a bit of a misnomer. So how they just determined that chimpanzees were supposedly eating meat was they were doing like stool samples. But what they neglected to recognize was that the chimpanzees often urinate on each other's stool.
Okay.
So they were getting like the protein out of the urine and then saying like, oh, we're seeing like this little protein in there. So therefore they must be eating like, I think it was like 1 or 2% is, other animals. Yeah. But like, then it took it, it's kind of like the same thing, like where we didn't think that any of the chimpanzees or bonobos or anything drank water for a long time. But that was just because nobody had watched them go drink water.
Yeah.
And so, it's like this absence of evidence, we sometimes jump to conclusions because we have like a pre-existing idea that we want in our head.
Totally.
So we want the monkeys to eat meat because we eat meat.
Correct.
And we want to normalize that. And so there's like a little bit of that like researcher bias that goes into it and then, eventually some other researchers would come along and be like, hey, did you control for that? Yeah. And then like, yeah, well, we've already launch that out to the public. So
yeah, well, it's it comes back to we really have to like question everything and scrutinize everything, and also challenge our own preconceived notions, which is what we try to do all the time on this podcast. Which is why we're interviewing people like you. But back to the point, gorillas who don't eat meat are like a silverback gorilla. You look at that thing and it has muscles, but it's usable muscle. It's massive muscle. So it's clear that you don't require animal fat to build muscles.
Well. And even if you look at the cow, right? The cow eats grass. Yes. It's one of the largest animals. It puts on the most muscle mass.
Yeah. And I think so. And then, again, like I'm challenging this just from the point of view of someone who, is a carnivore, or Weston A. Price.
Yeah.
And we have these examples in the carnivore world. Paul Saladino, Sean Baker, who's like a very outspoken carnivore. They cherry pick a vegan who has died, right? They've been a vegan for 20 years and they just passed away at age 40. And they're like, see, this is what happens. You wither away. You're not getting what you need. And what I'm learning, what I fast have learned in your community, is you've got to eat more. You can't eat like a bird. Like if you're going to adopt this diet and you're just going to eat fruit for breakfast, what I've been doing, like I posted a picture of a bowl full of fruit, which I thought was a big bowl full of fruit, right? It's like an apple, 2 oranges, and some cucumber. And someone's like, that's about 200 calories. Like you're going to have to do 6 times that. You're going to have to make up for that down the line. And it's true. Like if you adopt this diet from a caloric standpoint, you do have to eat more. And that's what Maria had also emphasized. And what again, back to this, like cherry picking, these vegans who don't look healthy are probably just not eating. One, they might not be eating appropriately, right? And then 2,
yeah, well, there's a couple things going on, if I could jump in. So like there was the one that the media has been like really promoting for the last 2 years. Zana de Art, she was like an Instagram influencer or whatever. She was anorexic.
Yes.
She was a woman who was anorexic for her whole life, or for most of her adult life, and she just progressively found more and more extreme ways to eat.
Yeah.
But she did not follow the natural hygiene diet. Like what she ate was extremely restrictive. I don't remember exactly everything, but it was like fruit and sunflower sprouts. She ate no nuts, no salads, no and I mean she was literally just eating like 30-calorie watermelon bowls. And if you do that, then you're going to waste away to nothing, because your body still needs calories.
Yes.
It still needs fuel. And so that's like you said, it's a lot of times it is cherry picking of like, this person who is fasted 17 times. And, these are people who have eating disorders. These are not representative of the average community. Or, on the same end of the spectrum, you can also look at the obese vegans, people who are eating cooked foods, who are eating like the Impossible burgers and the Beyond burgers. I mean, I used to live in Las Vegas. We had 30 vegan restaurants. Only 2 of them had raw food. The rest of them were like deep fried, like there was one that was like a vegan diner where it was like, you could get a vegan cheesesteak and a vegan chicken parm and a vegan spaghetti and meatballs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the point, But like some people, like because there's a, like I say, like vegan is not a diet.
Yeah.
Vegan is a moral and ethical stance that it is wrong to take the life of something that's not willing to give its life. And, also, I mean, they also don't utilize animals. So like, you can't have a ox pulling your cart, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't have explicit permission.
Yeah, you can't wear leather.
You don't want to wear leather because that animal didn't willingly give up its skin for you to wear it. So that is a philosophy. It is like a moral position. It is not a diet. And so vegans can eat Oreo cookies. They can eat they can go to Starbucks every morning and get an oat milk latte. They can eat potato chips, French fries. It doesn't automatically equate to being healthy. And the same for vegetarians. There are many vegetarians who are very, very healthy. And then there are vegetarians who, like when I was young, I went vegetarian and I called myself a carbitarian or a starchitarian because all I ate was pasta, bagels. I grew up in New Jersey, so it's like, bagels for breakfast, bagel for lunch, pasta for dinner. You go out to a good Italian restaurant. So, there's just like this cherry picking, right? Like, and I remember there was this one, yeah. And it's mostly just them, them picking, like, because they could pick people like me. Why don't they pick people like me to put up on their,
Well, let's pick someone like you right now. Could you walk us through what you eat in a week with some amount of detail too? Because I think it's really interesting, and let's drill down on that a little bit.
Yeah. So I'll be honest, like I eat kind of boring because, we feed a lot of animals and we work on a like low budget here. We take care of a lot of animals and stuff. So we don't splurge on a whole lot of stuff. So we buy bananas 40 pounds at a time, 40-pound cases. We buy like 4 or 5 boxes a week, and we feed them to the dogs and to ourselves. So most days, pretty much every single day, I have at least 5 or 6 bananas as one fruit meal. Now, as most people starting out, you're going to eat like 5 or 6 meals per day because you just can't fit, 10 or 15 bananas in your stomach. I've been doing this a long time. So a lot of times, if I just don't feel like having to eat like multiple meals during the day, I will eat 12 or 15 bananas in one sitting. That's my meal, 12 or 15 bananas. And especially like if I'm going out biking, like I used to do a lot of mountain biking where I'd be riding like 20 or 30 miles out in the desert. And on those days, like I would just have to down, 20 bananas in order to have enough fuel. And then maybe I'd have like a few dates in my bag to snack on for extra calories while I was out on the trail. And then I'd come home and I'd have like a big giant salad. So, but my typical day now where I'm on the computer a heck of a lot more these days because I'm running all these groups. And so, I do tend to eat more two fruit meals per day and then a salad meal most days. So typical day is going to be like in the morning, I usually have my bananas and it'll be somewhere between 5 and 8 bananas, just depending on how hungry I am. And then my second meal will be another fruit, like roughly the same size meal. So I might do like 2 pounds of grapes. So that's like a whole bag of grapes that you get at the grocery store. Or right now it's winter, so we're buying lots of oranges because that's what's in season. So the oranges usually come in the 3-pound bags. So I'll eat an entire 3-pound bag of oranges as a meal. I usually, things like berries, they're not really a meal. So what I'm probably going to have today, I have a couple of really giant pears that I got from somebody. Somebody sent me them as a Christmas gift. And then I have like 2 packages of blackberries and 2 packages of blueberries. So I'll probably eat at least 2 of those packages plus the 3 pears, and they're giant pears. So they're like pear is equivalent of like 6 pears, 6 normal size pears. So generally what I eat is like somewhere in the range of 6 to 8 pieces of fruit per meal. And I eat very simply, like in the kind of standard American diet, we always want to mix things. So like you were saying before, like you had the banana and the orange and the cucumbers all in one sitting. So technically not ideal food combining because the oranges are an acid fruit, bananas are a sweet fruit, cucumbers are fine with either one, but that's like our when we first transitioned, that's like our natural go-to is like, I need to eat like a variety. I need to make that big fancy berry bowl.
Right? Eat the rainbow.
Yeah. And we say, like, I love that because we run the support group and every month though people will be posting up and it's like, you can always tell the people who have been doing this for a while versus the people that are new. Cause the people that are new, it's like, I have 12 fruits on my plate and it's like it's like one bite of each fruit, but there's like 12 different fruits on there. And I'm like, not enough calories, way too busy. So yeah, it is a big shift in terms of simplification, but huge benefits to that. Like it's so easy to just grab 2 bunches of bananas and sit down and eat. You don't have to do a whole bunch of chopping and cleaning dishes. And I mean, for me, like I hate washing dishes. I hate like having to clean the kitchen. So life-changing for me was not having to scrub pots and make 1,200 dishes because for some reason if I cook things I need to like use every pot and pan in the entire kitchen when I don't know. But so like for me it's a huge time saver of just being able to be like, oh, I'm gonna eat some bananas, let's just grab a bunch and go peel them and we're good. So the simpler the better, the better our digestion is when we eat really simple meals because we only have one stomach. It's got to do all the work. So if we're mixing a lot of different things in there, it's going to be kind of a mess. But yeah, so that's my day is usually like bananas and then whatever other fruit is in season. Right now it's oranges. And then my evening salad is sometimes I get a little more exotic, but most days it's 1 head of iceberg lettuce, 1 pound of vine ripe tomatoes, and either like half of like an English cucumber or like 1 like regular cucumber or like 2 or 3 of the little mini cucumbers. And then if I'm like really getting crazy, I might throw a bell pepper in there. But I do really simple salads, but big volume.
And are you doing like blue cheese or ranch on that?
So my favorite dressing is actually it's tomatoes blended with dates.
Hey, that's it.
Yeah, that's
You're
it.
not doing salt. You know, because I know salt. You know, salts we can touch on that, but no salt, no pepper, no herbs. Right? You just that's it.
Right.
Tomato, dates.
Yeah. Yeah, tomato, dates, no salt, no pepper, no herbs. Now, when people are transitioning, salt is probably the hardest thing to get off of.
Okay.
So we always recommend the Bragg's liquid aminos. It's a fermented soy product. So it looks like soy
Yeah,
sauce.
I've got it in my cupboard.
Yeah. So we'll use that because it's not an inorganic salt. So inorganic minerals get deposited into our tissues, and they like if you've ever seen like as people get older, you know how they get like really stiff and start to kind of curl in on themselves. That's from all of that we're inorganic minerals depositing into our tissues, and like we're literally turning to stone. So I actually have an article on my website about inorganic minerals, and it's called the slow petrifaction of the body from inorganic minerals. So, it's like petrifaction, like, trees turn into stone.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening to our body. We're depositing all of those rock minerals. And that's what happens when we take supplements. Supplements are inorganic minerals. So every time you put a supplement into your body, you're putting those inorganic minerals. And the same thing with salt. And that's one of those things that people really have a hard time with because everybody wants their gray salt and their Himalayan salt and all their special salts. And they're always like, no, this one's good for you because it's got, so many minerals and it's better for you. It's still inorganic. It's still a rock. You're still putting a rock into your body, and your body's not used to. And if you think about also, our natural foods don't need salt. If you eat an apple, you don't naturally gravitate towards putting salt on it unless you have a really bad salt addiction. You eat a salad, it's already salty. It's there's organic sodium. That's what our body needs. Our body needs organic sodium. So, the celery is very salty. The tomatoes are very salty. The lettuce is very salty. But when we've been eating salt, table salt, our whole lives, our taste buds are injured. And so it takes a little time for them to kind of recover from that. Yeah. So a lot of people that like first 6 months or a year, they need that like little bit more saltiness. So the Bragg's can be like a really good way to just get over that hump without going back to the salt, but still getting that like little bit of a salty kick. Yeah. But then eventually you'll get to a point where even that is too salty for you and it's actually uncomfortable. Most people don't recognize how uncomfortable salt is, but if you just took a spoonful of salt and put it on your tongue, it burns, right? It hurts.
Yeah.
Or if like you ever have chapped lips and you eat like spicy potato chips and then your lips are burning.
Yeah, true. No, it's very true.
Same thing happens on the inside.
Okay. Mike, does that satisfy your question about what Lauren eats in a week?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny to think about sitting there and eating like 15 bananas, but that's just the cultural programming, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
and
great.
It's something that takes time. I mean, like when I first started, I was maxing out at like 3 or 4 bananas.
Yeah, right.
Eat 15 in one sitting. And so it's, when I first started, it was like 3 bananas and then, maybe have a bowl of berries. And then I would have some dates and some raisins and like dried fruit. Dried fruit is really great for transitioning because it's much more calorie dense in smaller quantities. Right. So it's much easier to get those calories in. And that's where you were saying before about a lot of people, who get really thin on the diet is they're eating all of these really water rich foods like watermelon. They're doing like watermelon island and people don't realize that in order to get like 2,000 calories in watermelon, you need to eat roughly a 30 pound watermelon because once you remove the skin and everything, that's, that it's about a 30 pounder. So it's, that's one of those big, long, massive ones, right? Yeah. You have to eat that.
What about for your gardening? What are you prioritizing for things you grow?
So we put in a lot of fruit trees and we've been working because fruit trees take a few years to start producing fruit. So the first year we put in lots of fig trees because they produce quickly. And then we put in persimmons. We've got blueberries and blackberries and peaches and plums is what we put in that are.
And Lauren, where are you located? What's your growing region?
I'm in East Texas, about 2 hours east of Dallas. We're kind of rural.
Okay.
So it's like pretty green here,
but
warmer.
Yeah,
it's like today it's in the 60s, but like yesterday it was almost 80.
Yeah.
Um, and but we have kind of like a weird growing area because we get essentially no rain from the roughly end of June until sometimes October or November. So you have this great like spring where everything grows because you can start putting plants in the ground in March, but then by the time summer rolls around, we've got no water. So it can be a bit of a challenge. So we've been working a lot with like building up our beds with big mulch layers and everything to really help retain the water. And that's there's always different growing challenges every year. Bugs are a big problem and all that.
Yeah.
So you don't mess around with growing lettuce or anything like that?
So I do not grow lettuce. I would like to, but I have not had any luck because of the heat and
and the
water
dryness.
issues here.
Yep.
Yeah. So we buy our own lettuce, but we grow tons of tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini, bell peppers, and then Nat really loves to grow the non-spicy peppers. So like, there's like jalapenos and habaneros and stuff. Well, there's nadapinos and habanadas and all of these. They look like the spicy peppers and they have the flavor of the spicy pepper, but just without any of the spice. Huh. So we grow a bunch of that stuff. And then we grow a lot of ground cherries, which is like, kind of like a gooseberry type plant, but it grows like a weed and it produces prolifically. And, you like once you plant it next year you'll have 100 plants just everywhere in your garden. Like you actually have to pluck some of them as weeds. And then I usually like play around with different things every year. So I'll just test out like heirloom varieties of melons or, there's like a Japanese eggplant that you can eat raw that's like actually sweet instead of like the big bitter eggplant that we usually find in the grocery stores. So I like to play around a little bit with that. And like, so I'll have one corner of my garden that will just be like experimental things, that something I've never tried before. And we put in like 50 to 75 tomato plants. So like the whole summer we just eat tomatoes like every single day. We just literally walk through the garden and just eat pounds and pounds of tomatoes.
Amazing. It's amazing.
Very cool.
I mean, it's the Garden of Eden.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. That's our goal is eventually, right now we're on a small property. Eventually our goal is to get like a couple, maybe like 10 or 20 acres and really create like a full fruit forest, Garden of Eden, just be able to like walk through, pick your breakfast.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. Lauren, for a listener who is interested in like starting a transition more towards this natural hygiene diet, like where would be a great place to start? Like a not intimidating, great place to start?
Yeah. So what I always tell people is we are habitual beings. So we run on our habits. And if we try to change everything all at once, we're going to get frustrated, or the first time we get stressed out or have a fight with our, loved one or something like that, we're just going to run back to like whatever our default habit is. So what I always tell people is we always overestimate what we can do in a day, underestimate what we can do in a year, make small changes and create habits out of them. So the first 30 days, you don't want to worry about going 100% raw. You want to worry about having fruit every morning. That's it. Just fruit every morning. First meal that you eat of the day, you have fruit. Doesn't matter what you do the rest of the day. It doesn't matter how far you spiral the rest of the day. The next morning you wake up, you have your fruit. If you do that for 30 days, 60 days, that is going to become an ingrained habit. And it's just, you're going to wake up one day and just be like on autopilot making my fruit. Yeah. And so then, once that feels comfortable, then add a salad. Eat a salad every single day. Lunch or dinner, either one. Just eat a salad every day. So you have your fruit in the morning, you have your salad. Then start adding a second fruit meal and pushing your salad to the evening. And you can still have a little cooked food with your salad, but have the salad with the cooked food, right? Because that's going to make the cooked meal smaller. And, and then progressively make your salad bigger. And eventually, you're going to crowd out the cooked food by just stuffing in more and more or good stuff, right? So that's why I always tell people, just like focus on stuffing in the good stuff. You're just gonna naturally crowd out the bad stuff over time. And the more we eat our fruit, the more we eat our salads, the better it tastes, and the more our taste buds heal. And so then the less appealing those cooked foods start to taste. Yep. because once you've been eating raw for a while, if you try to go back to cooked food, you're like, oh my God, that tastes awful. That burns my tongue. That's like, it has no flavor. It's tastes very acidic. Cooked food like really does not taste good, but we're just like socially programmed to eat it. And so we've just been habitualized to it. So if we have been habitualized to something bad for us, we have to create a new habit to replace that.
And we didn't really talk about it much, but like nuts and seeds are on the menu.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Humans need nuts and seeds. They are a dense food, so we don't want to eat them in large quantities. And we don't necessarily eat them every single day, but we should be eating them consistently. So, you might not eat it every single day, but you're probably going to eat it every week.
And what should you focus on and what should you avoid within that category?
So obviously roasted nuts become carcinogenic. Okay. So we want to avoid the roasted and salted and, coated and all of that. Any nuts are fine. It's good to get a variety of nuts. And if you have a problem with overeating on nuts, get them in the shell, because if you have to sit there and crack the nut open to eat it, your appetite meter is actually going to have time to turn on, because a lot of times where we run into problems with nuts is we get them shelled in a bag and then we're just sitting there shoveling them in handful at a time.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah. Me too. I could still do that. I could still sit there and eat an entire bag of cashews in one sitting. Have stomach ache later, but yeah. So if you have that in the shell, it just slows you down and it lets you kind of catch that before, like, let the appetite catch up, basically. And yeah. But what I generally tell people is good rule of thumb is between a quarter cup and a half a cup a day. If you're exercising heavily, you're on the higher end, half a cup a day. If you're kind of more sedentary, work from home, stuck at your desk all day, then stick to the lower end of that, a quarter cup a day. And then eventually you'll get to a point where you don't want to eat them every single day. Yep. But generally most people feel the best eating them like 2 or 3 days a week. But we have to remember too that we're seasonal eaters, right? Because fruit grows in seasons and nuts grow in seasons. So we're naturally going to gravitate towards those heavier, denser foods like the nuts and seeds in the winter when they're being produced. And in the summer, when you're eating like tons of watery watermelon and everything is, light and fresh and you're outside running around in the heat, you don't want those heavy, denser foods. So a lot of times there'll be like a couple weeks in the summer where I will have 0 nuts. They're just not appealing to me. But then in the winter, I'll be having them maybe every day or like, at least 4 or 5 times a week. And it's just because the temperature changes, we want that denser to help us keep the body warm, versus in the summer, we want to stay cooler. So we want more watery, lighter foods. So, kind of lean into that a little bit.
What about on the, while we're on the subject of beverages, like where are you at with juice and or water? And do you expect to get most of your hydration through fresh fruit?
No. So humans require about a gallon of water per day on top of a 100% raw diet. And if we're eating cooked foods, we need more water than that. So what we always recommend in our support group is that wherever you're starting at, just work your way up 1 liter at a time or 1 quart at a time. But your goal is to get to at least 4 liters, at least 1 gallon of water per day. And what I do is I always have 4 of these filled up, and I keep them because I have that like ADD where you get like really super hyper focused on something and forget that the entire rest of the world exists. So I keep my water right on my desk or wherever I'm going to be for the day. And I just line up my jars so that I remember to drink, because otherwise I will forget to drink. But the human digestion has 3 cycles. So from 12 p.m. noon to 8 p.m. is digestion. From 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. is assimilation. And then from 4 a.m. until noon is elimination. So as natural hygienists, we start eating at 12 noon and we stop eating at 8 p.m. because that's the optimal digestion time. If we eat before that, then the body is still working on eliminating from the day before. And so we interrupt elimination. So what we do is how we structure our day is we wake up in the morning and we drink water from when we wake up until noon. And so it's very easy to get in 3 or 4 liters of water if you're not eating any food first. when we're first transitioning, most people do need to eat a little bit earlier. They'll start out maybe, trying to push it back like an hour at a time because we get the hunger pains. And hunger pains are not hunger. They are the stomach communicating that it's been irritated from whatever we ate previously. But if you're coming off of cooked foods, or if you're still transitioning, you're still eating a little bit of cooked food, you're going to have those hunger pains in the morning. Once you're fully raw and your stomach has had a little bit of time to heal, those hunger pains go away entirely. So it becomes very easy to not eat until noon because you don't have any discomfort. You just wake up, you feel great. And so, what we do is we drink water until noon, and then we start eating our fruit meals. And then we'll have like a fruit meal at noon, and then maybe another one at like 2 or 3 p.m. And then maybe we'll have a snack of dried fruits or a snack of nuts. And then we'll have a big salad in the evening. And then you might drink a little bit of more water in between your meals. But we try to not drink too much water after our meals because it dilutes the digestive enzymes. So it can upset your digestion and it could create like gas and bloating and burping and stuff like that. If you say eat a bowl of grapes and then drink a whole bunch of water right after it, it's going to be diluted and then that's going to ferment instead. So we kind of have that structure. And then also, like, you might notice that it's like lighter foods to heavier foods. So, in the morning we're eating the fruit that's going to digest really quickly and keeps us feeling really light. And then as we get later in the day, we're going to, you're winding down. So the lettuce is like, has that natural sedative and it helps you to fall asleep really gently. So that's why we have our really big salads in the evening shortly before you go to bed, a couple hours before you go to bed.
Cool. How about juice? Do you drink juice?
I do not, with the exception of fresh pressed orange and citrus juices, because the problem with like masticating juicers or like, if you're making like carrot juice or, vegetable juices and things like that is our digestive tract requires fiber. Fiber is the bulk that actually, so our digestive tract is a smooth muscle that presses against the stool, and it requires that bulk in order to compress properly. So if we're taking the fiber out of the juice, we're removing that ability of the food to move through our digestive tract. And so we can have the occasional juice. Natural hygiene doesn't say like, oh, you can never ever have juice, but we definitely discourage doing juice fasting, where you're going, 30 days, 60 days doing nothing but juice because you're not getting any fiber. And when people do that, you get really constipated. And, in order to clean our body, we have to be eliminating properly. So our eliminations have to be regular. And so if we're, even if we're eating something that, it seems like, oh, it's good, you're just doing juice and vegetables and, it's all fruits and there's not, no meat, no dairy, nothing like that. You think that you're doing a great job, but you're still impairing your elimination. And so even at that if you took like somebody who'd been on natural hygiene for 20 years and, they're at a state of peak health, and then you put them on a juice fast, their health would plummet because, they're coming from that much higher level and it's dropping down because they're not able to eliminate and they're constipated and everything is going to start to back up and your lymphatic system's going to start to back up and everything. So, and it's okay, transitioning perfectly fine. Same with smoothies. Smoothies are okay for transitioning, but eventually we want to get away from them to just eating more whole foods.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Well, Lauren, we are like 90 minutes in. It honestly feels like we've been talking for 15. This has flown by, and
Yeah.
I feel like this is such a fascinating topic, and you are a wealth of information. Clearly, you are steeped in this world of natural hygiene, and we really appreciate you sharing your wisdom, your lived
pleasure.
experience, and all the work that you've been sharing with your community that you're also building. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, and we are going to ask you how people can get in touch with you because I do want them to do that. But before we do, we got to ask you the question that we ask all our guests, and that is, what are your non-negotiables, the daily habits you do to tend your train?
Yeah, that's a great question. So water, obviously huge. Every morning, get up, drink my water. Sunshine, fresh air, exercise every single day. Like, at least taking the dogs for a walk, get out there, breathe some fresh air, stand in the sun. Fruit every single day, big giant salad every single day. Those are all non-negotiable.
So simple.
Yeah. And then, I do think so natural hygiene has like 19 factors of health. I won't go over all of them, but I do think that one of the ones that I think is really important for our health, that is most people kind of gloss over, is meaningful purpose. Is that, what are you doing in life that you're passionate about? And it doesn't necessarily mean your job. Like, you might have to have a job to pay the bills, but like, you need to have some sort of meaningful purpose in life. And so for me, natural hygiene is that. Rescuing dogs is that. So that is one of my non-negotiables too. Just having that thing that you're really passionate about and that you're chasing every day.
Yeah. Well, it's clear that it is that for you. Lauren, what about go-to book recommendations for folks who want to learn more about this?
Yeah. So in our Facebook group, we have tons of old natural hygiene books that sometimes are out of print. But if you just want to like pick up a paper copy, I would recommend anything by Herbert Shelton. He is kind of the godfather of natural hygiene. He compiled the most data and work and everything like that. There's also the life science course. One of our group members actually put it up onto Amazon for us in paper form, but we have a free copy in our training group. It is a 2,000-page PDF. It was originally built as a course to teach natural hygiene practitioners, but it was gifted to the community by T.C. Fry when he passed away. And it is just like such a tremendous gift to the world, really. It like literally any question you can think of about your health, you can like Control F and search in this document, and you will find an answer. And it's just such like an invaluable resource. And so we do give it away completely free on our Facebook group is called Terrain Model Refutes Germ Theory. And so anybody coming to the group, you can get that right in our group files. So I would definitely recommend that. In terms of like, if you just want a quick read to get the basics, like big picture and like a jumping off point for starting the diet, I would recommend Doug Graham's book, The 80-10-10 Diet. He's a natural hygiene practitioner, and he breaks it down. He works with like Olympic athletes training and stuff like that. And so he breaks it down. It's not like a real detailed dive into the science. It's more of like it hits on all of the key points. It's a good overview. It's a good, like, just solid piece of information to give you a jumping off point. But if you really want to delve into the science, I definitely recommend any of Dr. Shelton's books. And they're just full of just resources. And then if you're really adventurous, go back through history. I mean, there's so many. Like my entire upper shelf here, yeah. We've got CarQ and you've got The Natural Food of Man, Harold Carrington. I mean, there's so many great books going back like in the last 100 years that are just outside of like the mainstream knowledge, because they give us this freedom, this truth to be healthy.
Yeah. It's not the new food pyramid.
Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started.
I knew you were going to say that. We don't have time to get you started. Next time, Lauren.
Yeah.
Lauren,
yeah.
You've already mentioned the Facebook group, but where else can the listener learn more about you and your work and get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I have a website. It's called therawkey.com. And we have information about the natural human diet, the whole science, natural hygiene, articles about specific disease conditions and all that. And then I also have stuff about animal care, so dogs and cats. 'Cause like I said, that's my passion, rescuing dogs and cats. And so, if people want to learn about the natural dog diet, natural cat diet, and how to heal your animals from different diseases, lots of information on the website. And then we also have a Facebook group for the natural dog and cat diet. It's called the Natural Dog and Cat Diet with therawkey.com. And then obviously our terrain group. And then we do run a monthly support group for people who are interested in transitioning. That is a paid support group. It's $29 a month. You get myself, Nat Farris, Maria Manaza, and Gosha Ador. We've all been living the natural hygiene lifestyle for combined like over 40 years. So, we're in there every single day answering people's questions, helping people transition, helping you figure out. And you get, when you join the group, you get like our recipe book. Which over here we have the Natural Human Diet Quick Start Guide. It's full of like over 100 recipes and helps people get started. And, we just kind of answer all those questions that people don't even know they need to ask. Like, how do you get over the cravings for salt? Or how do I stop eating chocolate? And,
Yeah.
all of those things that you don't really think about until you're in the moment and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die if I don't have a piece of chocolate. So
That was you, maybe. For me, it was how do I do this without Ben and Jerry's? But I'm over it.
yeah.
I'm over it. Oh
Great
my
job.
God, yeah.
Nice cream.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I'll mention this too to Mike later, but just transitioning to fruit in the morning, which is what I did. I've started doing it. I mean, I'm like over a month in now. My sweet tooth, I don't get those cravings at night. I used to just get cravings like for something sugary, something sweet, like a dessert. I've had it
Yeah.
like my whole life, and it's like the farthest thing from my mind now. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
getting
And
that
that's,
sated.
yeah. And it's because you are like your body, every cell in your body runs on sugar.
Yes.
And so we're eating all this high protein food that's not providing that fuel. So then at the end of the day, your body's like, hey, ding, 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 we didn't get any sugar today. Give me something sweet.
Yeah.
And, we default to the ice cream or the cookies or the cake instead of the fruit.
Yeah. It's been that alone has been a remarkable transformation for me. Like that's why I'm like kind of bought in here, because I'm doing it and I'm feeling great. And that
Yeah, you can feel
one
it.
piece right there is like, holy cow, I've tried everything my whole life, like habits and just, rewiring my brain. And this has been the one thing that's working. It seems to be working. So anyway, we'll put the links in the show notes. I really look forward to staying connected with you. I really appreciate all that you're doing to support the folks that are coming into the space. You guys
Yeah, my pleasure.
you're a wealth of information. You guys are really caring and considerate and patient with folks, who are arriving. And I hope that we can have you back on to continue this conversation, because it's like there's so much more that we can touch on, like the stages of disease, cancer, sepsis, like really diving into the terrain stuff. So if you're up for it,
Yeah.
let's get you scheduled like down the road. Come back on.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
amazing,
happy to.
amazing. Lauren Farris, thank you so much for joining us on the Terrain Theory podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.